Well, hello and welcome back to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer. Also joining us today is Scott Allen, who is in charge of our art department, I guess, lead designer. He's here to answer questions. Normally we'd be joined today by Sarah Mitchell, but she's off on vacation this week. So hey, let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello, Dave.
Hey there. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
By the way, I was looking at the attendee list and it shows 2 Dave McCormicks, and there can be only one Dave McCormick.
In the end,
I'm not Dave McCormick. Nobody should be there. Hey, well, good to talk to you, Dave, and welcome to everybody to our weekly webinar. We appreciate you taking time to visit with us. We have a demonstration of some really cool new user interface technologies today. We're also here to answer your questions. I want to thank the folks who sent in requests via guides@alphasoftware.com. We're reviewing that, looking how we can tie that into future sessions. So we want to always say thank you so much for that. And again, take the time if you have questions to go to our GoToWebinar questions area and input your questions there. Dave will be monitoring along with our helpful associate Scott, which we really appreciate having online. If anybody knows a user interface, Scott knows user interface. And again, Sarah is not joining us today because I have no idea, somewhere out in the wild or having a good time.
She's on vacation, which apparently is allowed. We didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Good for her. Smartest one in the group, apparently. So thank you. And by the way, if at any time I have to, I got to tell you, Dave, there may be an interruption today. I'm just going to throw that out.
All right.
But it's a valid and an acceptable interruption because arriving today, sometime before 3 p.m., is my new Apple M1 Mini computer. Dun, dun, dun.
Really?
So,
with the new ARM chip?
I forked out the cash, and that baby's coming in today. I was really excited. It was really going to be here like at the end of the month, but then I guess they had a spare one sitting around, so they sent it away.
Oh, that is exciting. Now, my understanding is that even though it's an ARM chip, it'll still be able to run Parallels. Is that right?
Well,
there's some sort of emulator or something, I thought.
Very good point. They've been doing experiments. There's no official on that right now. So again, if you're going to try and run Parallels, you got to get an Intel box. But apparently Parallels, the company is working on it. Other people are. They're selling so many of them, it's just going to happen there. But that actual machine's kind of my desktop one, and I use that a lot more for video and stuff. But I actually can just use a remote to desktop into Alpha on a remote virtual machine.
Oh, sure.
So you don't really need Parallels there.
Right.
So, and that's an option for people. If you're a Mac person, you have 2 options. You can either get Parallels, run it locally on your machine, or hey, get a VM in the cloud. And they're really inexpensive, and they're available from many different people: ZebraHost, AWS, etc. And it works great.
Or a VM somewhere on your local network, which a lot of people do. They have another PC. It's running in their office.
True.
It's just plugged into a LAN, and no internet, just LAN required.
Far more secure, far more secure. Well, that aside, so if I have to step away, it's because maybe UPS is here.
And that's a good reason, Dion. Okay.
I'm going to dump you people like a hot potato if that happens. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay. Got to start giving up smoking, man. That's like really getting, and that's not COVID. I don't have COVID, everybody.
All right, fair enough.
So we have today a discussion around user interface. One thing that's really important for Alpha as a company is not only do we have amazing low-code development tools that create very powerful systems, but the team continually enhances the user interface capabilities to not only make our stuff work really well, but also look good and have a wonderful user experience to the person using your application. So there's an ongoing effort to continually enhance that and put that in. And what I'm going to show you today is one of the benefits of that effort, which is a new technology that is now in production. It's in the production release. We just had one recently. I'm going to show you the pre-release stuff just because that's what I'm working on right here, but it is now available. And it's something I think you can put into your user interface arsenal and have available to really do some really cool stuff. It makes it slicker, more exciting, more interesting. It kind of is Web 2.0-ish kind of scenario, and it opens up a lot of really cool features, especially when you think about mobile platforms. Again, desktop, you tend to have a fair amount of space on it, and even then you may want to put up a ton of data. But when you have a mobile environment, you have limited screen real estate. So you're really going to need to be able to have the ability to, leverage that interface space in a better way. And this is a cool technology that you can do that with. I also want to touch on the new installer. I'm going to do that first, just because I'm starting to use it almost every day and I really like it and I want to kind of get people familiar with it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in first. That again, questions, drop them into the questions area. Both Scott and Dave, the fake Dave, will be reviewing those. And if there's any questions, then obviously we'll try to get through as many as possible. So I'm going to jump over into, and again, this is my Mac laptop. So I actually have parallels on this. This is an Intel one versus the new desktop. And I'm first going to go into the Alpha Universal Installer. Get rid of all my other stuff here and put that right here so we can see what that's going on there. Okay. So the cool thing about the Universal Installer is it really takes a lot of the headaches out of keeping your stuff up to date. Two things that are really powerful about this. One, it's sort of like Lord of the Rings. It's one installer to rule them all. Basically, you download this once and you're done. And what's really cool about that is you don't have to go and say, oh, I want a new version of this. I got to go find it. I got to download it, unzip it, install it, etc. This does a lot of that work for you. So it actually, in my mind, which is really cool, it actually promotes experimentation and using of the new releases and other things, because it's just not a hassle to put that up together. And you can keep things up to date very readily. Now, again, remember, if you update a local version of your development environment, you do some stuff, you publish to your server, make sure both your server and your local is at the same revision of the alpha development environment and server. Otherwise, bad things happen, especially if the server is older than your development environment. Things may break, and I learned that early on, so I always keep them in sync. But what's cool about it is that first, when you launch the installer, you'll notice that I have an installed area. So it's showing me what I've already installed, and I have two things in here. I have the developer edition stable build, tells me what the date, time, etc. of it, which is really cool. It kind of gives me that time there. This is the one I've been using for my stable build on this machine. Then I also have the developer edition nightly build. So this is the latest and greatest, and this is a newer version of it. And you can see I have both of these installed on my system. Now, this, I could have many others. I could actually install other versions and other things that I may want on this particular machine. And when I go in here, it's going to know what has been installed on my machine. Now, first and foremost, immediately I can go in and say, you know what? I want to launch that. So let me go ahead and exit out of here. So I'm going to sit there and just say, let's go, we'll come back in. That's my demo for today. Get ahead of the curve. Okay, cool. No, I don't want that one. Okay. So I'll go back in. I'm going to say, hey, launch that. So I don't have to go digging around. I don't have to look on my start menu or anything like that. It basically is going to launch that version. And I'll go ahead and exit out here and go help about. And you'll see I'm on build 7304. This is the nightly build. So that's a nice little feature because I don't have to remember what was my shortcut and everything else here. Let's say I want to go into my developer edition. I'm clicking the launch button in the installer and off to the races it goes. And in a moment, it will launch that. Go here. And there we go. And we're seeing it's an earlier version of it, the December 2nd one there. So that's a really handy feature. Now, I do have to say, you have to be a little careful here. And the reason why is that both of them are going to point to the same directory for my files and stuff like that. So it's installed two versions. They're both kind of looking at my same directory for the projects I'm working on. So you have to have a little discipline that, like, if you're just doing a little project with a newer release, you gotta have to make sure you know where that is and how it's loaded up. Because after a while, when things get really busy, you may accidentally launch the wrong one and load up and make some change there. So you just have to be a little careful there. But the nice thing about it is that when in doubt, you just go here and say, oh, I really want to be working on the nightly version. So I'm going to launch that one, and I'm launching the proper item or one to work with. Now, the other thing that's available is, and it's called available, so I can click here, and this tells me what is available on the server. So instead of me going to a web page trying to find stuff, I can actually see, oh, here's the developer edition. Here's the application server for IIS. Here's the regular application server, and here's the runtime. So basically here is where I can go find what is out there for me to install with Alpha. And along with that, it gives me the latest information here in terms of what is the version to install. And what's cool is I can click change and actually pick different versions. So I won't go into much detail here, but it allows you to fine tune what you're installing. So let's say you did a pre-release and you go, I want to go back a couple. You could go into the installer and say, you know what, I want to do the nightly build and I want to do it from Monday or Tuesday or something like that. This feature has always been available in Alpha Cloud, which is super awesome cool, meaning when you go deploy something, it will deploy it on that release, which is really powerful. So this somewhat mimics that capability. And it's really handy because then you don't have to, again, all of our releases are here. So you don't have to go dig them out. You don't have to create archives of them. Like before, I'd always, when I installed something, I'd copy all my installation files and put them in a special place in case, whatever reason, I had to reinstall that. This takes care of all that. It's really, really handy. So that's pretty cool there. So this is one of the cool things about this installer is that I can easily say, oh, you know what? I want to install the latest version of this. I can reinstall it. I can modify the installation and change parameters, etc., like the location and stuff like that. All that's built into this. And Terry has done just a fantastic job. He's the developer behind this, and I can't credit him enough in terms of the hard work it took to do this, because all of these installs have different behaviors, have different things it needs to do, and he had to unify all that along with unifying where everything's at. Huge amount of work went in to make such a simple and easy to use interface. So with that in mind, please download the Universal Installer. It's a really good piece of software. Start using it. I think once you start using it, you're never going to go back, and you're going to find it's really, really handy from that standpoint here. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the next step of the demonstration. And what I want to talk about is a new feature that was released very soon, or a little while ago. And we were going to actually do this demonstration a few weeks ago, but then we went off onto the API track, which was great. Got a lot of really good responses on that. But I want to return to this because I think it's really, really awesome and cool. So what this allows you to do is to use some really cool modern user interface tricks and techniques that are really kind of under the ground, under the covers, like CSS capabilities that are now in all modern browsers. And it uses a new kind of container concept. And I'm going to go through that in a few moments. Now, we've talked a lot about panel cards, and panel cards are your normal out-of-the-box way to organize your content into where you want it on a screen. So let's say, let's go in here. Let's see, I think I have something on this one. So in this case, you'll see we have a panel layout, we have a panel card, we can have multiple panel cards, you have panel headers, footers. This is your way to kind of structure the page. And also really powerful around the panel technology is two types of panel layouts. One is, well, two types of panel tech. One is panel layouts, which is everything's on the same screen, but you can dock panels, show them and hide them. But also you have what are called panel navigators, which allow you to kind of use like a swipe gesture to move through a set of cards to show at any one time. Now, the reason I mention that is this works great. It's really powerful. I use it. I mean, panel cards are the way to go. They're responsive. There's a lot of cool tricks you can do. You can use the built-in responsive rules to say relay out things on the fly, depending on what platform they're on. Very, very cool stuff. But it, you know, sometimes it was a bit on the heavy. It's kind of a structural thing. The important thing to remember about this is that when I go into the new container capability, it mimics and uses some of the same, call it, you know, design pattern philosophy of a panel layout and panel card and panel navigator. So if you've done panel cards, you're going to take to this very, very quickly because it is a similar process. So what are the new containers? So first I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new UX. Let's go here. And we'll go ahead and I'm not going to do any templates. I'm going to go ahead and just open a blank one. And so I'm on my UX here. Now we've always had what are called containers. So I'm going to go down here over on the left-hand side, and you'll see there's a control called container, and containers where you go to find all these different types of containers. And we've actually had a very robust, broad set of containers that provide different technologies. In essence, a container is kind of a div on an HTML page. It's where you can put content into it and do things within it. Often what I use containers for is I'll put a bunch of controls into it and then hide the container, which subsequently hides the controls. So it's like a nice way to organize my things and hide them and show them on the screen. But let me go ahead and click container, but you'll see we have a wide range of these. You have things like window containers where it'll do a pop-up window on your screen. We have injectable content. We've talked about that with control bars where you put an injectable content and then you can magically have that content appear somewhere else on the fly, like in a drop down from a control bar. And you also have things like absolute layout, which is really cool, which allows you to put a image into a box and then literally draw your controls at pixel perfect locations. And that's really cool for like form building, form filling out, and things along those lines. There's also things like alignment that allow you to align the content within it, and something called flex layout that uses a CSS technique. So we've had these in there for a long time. They're very useful. They're basically ways for you to put controls together, lay them out on the screen, and create behaviors around those. Now, in our case, we have a whole new set of ones that have been added called cards. And there's actually 4 different things that come with it. There's the basic card concept. Then we have footers and headers and navigators. And that kind of sounds a little familiar. It sounds like panel cards with panel headers, panel footers, and things along those lines there. So basically, the key thing to remember is this is just a container, but then that container has special properties that allow you to do some really cool stuff with it. So let's go ahead and put in card. I'm going to go ahead and just select card. And by the way, if you're curious, you can click here and it goes through and it has a description of what all these things do. And you can actually click here and go in and see videos of how these different controls work. So you don't have to go dig in and out. You can just go ahead and add a container, look at the container types, and go watch the demo. So I'm going to close here. I'm going to add a card. So it adds a card to it. It's a container type. It has a new kind of color scheme, so you can easily see it. And then now this container is really simple. All I can do in here is go ahead and put in some, I'm going to go ahead and put in some items here. So I'll go text box 1, text box 2, and let me go ahead and add a button here too. Button, and we put that there. Go ahead and say this. We'll go webinar card demo UX and working preview. By the way, I have a better internet connection than last time, so things should be a little snappier and less difficult.
I noticed that. Yeah.
But I'll be glad to slow things down if you would like. No problem there. So as you can see, the container itself is invisible. Basically, you're going to see that there is, it just is putting a group of things together on the screen. There's an invisible container around here that will allow us to do all our magical things from here. And it's basically within that container laying out those items. So you can do all the traditional things you want with a container. So for instance, you can come down here and put in client-side show hide expressions. You can put enable expressions. So I'm sorry, the card, excuse me. Let me go here. I apologize. But you could put in show hide expressions. You could do it on the server side or there. So all the traditional tools that you use or tricks and techniques that you use with containers works with cards, which make it really nice because you're basically building on a set of knowledge that already exists. But I'm going to go ahead and do some other cool things on here. One of the cool things about this is that it allows you to put like, you can center things in a container. So it has a layout concept. So let me clean this up. I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, you know what? Let's center this horizontally and vertically, and let's see what it looks like. So you'll notice now, it's actually gone ahead and aligned. That alone is worth its weight in gold. I mean, just laying out something nicely in the center of your screen, and depending on your screen size, it's going to automatically be responsive. Come on. It's not letting me, there we go. Notice how it's responsive to a certain degree. I mean, you get to certain limits, it can do that from there. There's other tricks there. Okay, so that's kind of nice feature there. You can also go in here and put a container border. So and you'll notice we have some pre-built borders, and again, nice stuff. So we can go right in there, and then around this container, you're gonna see has a nice border. Again, beyond the other cool magic stuff you'll see in a minute, this is cool in and of itself. That's just a better looking form. That's all I can say. It just has that more modern look and feel. You can change the text. Like for instance, I'm going to go into my properties here, and let's say I want to use alpha blue too. And let's go ahead and look and see what that looks like. I wonder if this changes it. We'll see. Yep. So now you have a different looking. You notice it's using the alpha blue and the other pieces. You can go into something like this and say, you know what? I want all of these to have 100% of the width of the container. And the card itself, you can set its width and height and other stuff like that. So right now, it's just got some nice layout features and capabilities. So that's pretty cool looking form. It's looking a little better than I had before, you know, from that standpoint. And these controls are just going to work like they do if they have validation, etc. But let's get into some of the cool magic stuff you can do. So let's go first. I want to go back into this card right here. And let's go ahead and go to, let's see what, I want to just see what this looks. Let's try gray thick box shadow and see what it looks like. I want something dramatic for our demonstration today. Looks, yeah, kind of a square, kind of floaty kind of thing there. By the way, you can go in and apply your own CSS, so you can get off the shelf CSS borders from many sites and bring that in and style it to your heart's desire. But, you know, this is cool showing one thing, but let's say I want to show a couple things. So let's go ahead and do the following thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce and add another card. So again, going to go down to containers. By the way, I'm still getting used to using the add control here, but I'm going to just do it the old school way. And I'm going to add a card. Okay. So now I have a card too. And one thing I'm going to do immediately is I'm going to click this prevent container float. That'll become important in a few minutes when I'll show you that. But let's go ahead and go into my data controls, and let's go text box 3, text box 4. Now, very important, I want this card to kind of look like this card. So I'm going to do a few things here. One is I'm going to make sure I have the same card properties. Now I could go in here and find them and do whatever it's need to do, but what I can do, which is kind of fun, is I can go here. I could just duplicate this card, by the way. That'd probably be the best way to do it. But I can click on this property right here called Card Center Horizontally, click here and select it, and you'll notice that it's telling me what the current state is. So if I want to copy these properties, I don't have to go dig them out. I just select the property and say copy it to the other control. And let's say container border, let's do that right there. So I basically copied these 3 over to this card too, so now we have that card too. Now what I'd like to, so let's go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and do a working preview. And you'll notice that it's showing both of them there. Now, the reason it's showing both of them there is because, again, cards have these magical properties. So let me go ahead and show you how we use those properties. So I'm going to go into my design, and I'm going to take my cards here, and I'm going to highlight all of them. And I'm going to go down to my containers. I'm going to add another container control. And very much like the panel navigator, I'm going to put a control around this here. Okay. So now I have a card navigator with 2 separate cards in it. And this is a special control that kind of, it manages the stuff within it. So let's go ahead and click save. Okay, let's see. Oh, I have to put in a width and a height. So let's do 300 pixels by 400 pixels. Now let's see if that corrected the problem. In there. So now you'll see that there is my first item here. Now, very important, you'll notice that it didn't obey the border criteria. So we can do the same thing here. We can say center and do a border. So instead of doing it on the card itself, the cards now have content, and the card navigator dictates that border and positioning. And you'll notice, again, we're only showing one card because we're inside of a card navigator. So it should look a little nicer there. And it's actually showing this because of the other card there. Now, let's go ahead and do the following. And the reason that's so high is, and I apologize, not because it's not showing the other item there, it's because I set this height. So for instance, my height is 400, maybe it just needs to be 300 pixels. And you can use other variants. It could be percentages and other stuff. It doesn't have to be pixels, but it's nice sometimes to lay things out on a pixel level there. So now it's noticed there, but it looks pretty cool. But you'll see I'm not seeing that other card. It's there, I'm just not seeing it. It's hidden currently. So let's say I want to show that card. Well, this is where the really cool magic stuff comes in. First, I'm going to go to my card navigator, and I'm going to add what's called a card header. And I can do that one of two ways. One is I can right click on it and click card header, or I can click here and go to my container and click the card header. Very similar to the card container, our card there. This is just an area that's going to be at the top of your container. And no matter what's in it, it's always going to be at the top. So it's like a panel header. So I'm going to go ahead and put a button in here. So we'll go down to other controls, put a button. And I'm going to call this button. Oh, it put an image. Excuse me. I don't want that. I want a button. There we go. And we'll call it navigate. And I'm going to go ahead and say that should be 100%. Notice I'm just clicking this little percent button right here and saying 100%. Now it sets the width of that. I'll save this so nothing happens. Okay, so now if I go in the working preview, let's look at this button. So now I have this little button up here at the top, says navigate, doesn't do anything yet. But now watch what I do. I go into this button right here. It opens up our action JavaScript. I'm going to click add new action, and I'm going to type the word card, C-A-R-D. And you'll notice we have a new set of actions called card navigator actions. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one, click OK. It's asking me what card. So we can do a couple things. We can navigate to a specific card, or we can get card navigator info. So maybe I want to find out what card's being displayed at that moment. So there's some, sort of feedback loop you can set up with your system. But I'm going to say navigate to card. Now you'll notice that it's going to ask me some questions now. First, it's going to say card navigator. Which one? Because I might have multiple on my screen, which is really, really powerful. And click OK. Now it's telling me the target card name. So this is similar to the panel navigate, or set active panel, where you can tell it to go to a particular card. But actually built into this, there's some really cool features. First, I can tell it to go to a specific card. So I can have a button that when you click on it, boom, it shows that card. Or we can use these other things called AA, next loop, preview loop, first and last, to basically say, do an action on my card. Since only one's being shown at a time, I'm going to say next loop. Now, the difference between next and next loop is next will go to the next card till it gets to the end and stops. Loop goes back to the first card. So it's like a carousel. So I'm going to do loop here. I'm going to come back and look at these in a moment, but just to show you, there we go. So we have our cards, we have our button navigate. Now we've lined up that navigate button. And now we're going to go ahead and click our magic button here and watch what happened. It went really quick, but you can notice that what happened is when I click navigate, it basically slid my content through this. So right away, you can probably see, wow, what a cool way to build a wizard interface, maybe for a form that you want to do. Or maybe there's a way to kind of show detail versus a header stuff. So you can see it unlocks a lot of really cool ways to do it. Now, another thing that's really important is cards are super lightweight. They take up very little space in your application. So the cool thing about that is that they load and they go very fast, and they're not going to impact your application. They're just super lightweight components. Now let's look at this navigate button. Let's go back in here, open that back up, go to my navigate app. Now remember, this is done in Action JavaScript. I would probably put that centrally on my central action JavaScript actions button and do it there so I can use it in different places, but we're doing it there. But you'll notice transition type. You'll see that it's slide right. So when we did the demo a few moments ago, it slid from one to the other on the right. but you'll see we have a whole bunch of cool ones. Slide left, slide up, down, and I like these flips. So let's go ahead and add a flip and see what that looks like. Save that. And let's go ahead and do the demo. We're using the new setting. Okay, so I can click here. Pretty cool. It's using some really neat ways to show you different ways of navigating between content on your screen. Now, the nice thing about that one, which I like a lot, is that it truly mimics a card metaphor. This navigates inside. If I put it outside of it, probably have a more impressive kind of look because it looks like this whole card is flipping over, like you have a card and you're playing a card game and you're flipping over from the top to the bottom. So it's really cool when you have sort of a summary on top and then maybe a detail below. You can say, oh, I'm going to flip that card over and see the details associated with it. Now, remember, I put this big button here, but you could put an icon on here. Let's go ahead and show you that just for that. So first thing I'm going to do is go back into my navigate, and it's buried in this location here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know what? I'm going to convert that to a JavaScript action. And I'm just going to call it flip card. So now what happens is it replaces that with a run action saying to run that flip card. And now if I go over to my JavaScript actions, I have flip card there. So by the way, that's a nice little trick. If you've already gone ahead and created some complex thing in a button, you go, oh, I really should have put that in my JavaScript actions area. You can just say, hey, convert it, put it over there, and we're good to go. So you don't have to recreate it inside the JavaScript actions. But now what I can do is go in here, and let's go ahead and just add an image. And I'm going to go ahead and go into my static image. And I'm going to use SVG. And let's find something interesting. This is let's just do something like, let's do that. Like that. That looks cool. Okay. So now I have my image on there. I'm going to go over here to my JavaScript clip action. So when someone clicks on that, and I'm going to do this, I can either add the action and say run action, or I can go right here to text mode and say insert code to run a JavaScript action, flip card. So as you can see, it's kind of nice. Once you have things on the JavaScript action side, you can connect them into any user interface element or call them via backend Xbasic scripts or pusher or any different way. So it's always a really good idea to make sure you have your actions in JavaScript actions. So let's click save. And it will save when it thinks about it. There we go. Come on. There we go. Okay. Save the overall UX and let's go ahead and look at it. Now, actually, before we do that demo there, let's go ahead and do a couple things. Let's get rid of this button. And I'm going to just go ahead and hide that just so we can get more of the expression. 1 equals 0. So I'm in my client show hide expression. I'm just saying 1 equals 0. So it'll always go to false and therefore it won't show it. So this is more of what I want to kind of demonstrate how get rid of those big buttons. And so you can have this actually, and then if I click on that, you'll see it goes here. Now you'll notice, wait, how do I get back? Up to you to kind of place that other icon in there. And in fact, what I probably do this icon, let's try this real quick. I want to make sure it comes across. Pick the wrong one. Let's select it. Do that one. So the idea is maybe you have a card which has some data and then you want to give them the opportunity to look at more detail. Well, they can just click this and boom, the new detail comes up and then you could have an icon that takes them back to that. As you can see, we are preserving an enormous amount of user interface space and it's controlled. It looks really nice on mobile devices. So the new card technology is really handy and very flexible. Because of these powerful action JavaScripts, I can be flipping this card information based upon other activities on my screen. So as I go in, maybe it's showing a summary or a detail or something along those lines. But the card stuff is really fun. There's one other control that's in here, is the card footer, and that's similar to the panel footer, where at the bottom, it will always be at the bottom of your card. So think of it as the bottom of your phone or whatever screen you have on there, and it's kind of locked there. So if you want to put navigation buttons or something like that. To give you an example of what that may look like is maybe you want to put like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 to kind of show you where you are in terms of the wizard interface, or you want to have like guidance information going on down there. So it's just an area at the bottom. I'll just put in some text, just say footer, and just show you what it looks like here. So you can see it's just down here at the footer, and you'll notice that it's at the footer of either one. So you have to play with that to make sure it comes out looking how you want it to do. But the footer is always going to be at the bottom of your card wherever it's shown. It's pretty fun from there. Let's see, anything else? No, that's it. Now, the cool thing about the card navigator is that it has a specific set of built-in functional view kind of structure. I think there are more planned coming down the road because they're all really cool ways to manipulate user interface. The card is basically a lightweight, it's sort of like the panel navigator, panel layout, panel cards, but it's lightweight and can be embedded within. So I can use this inside of panel cards. So I can use
if I can interrupt just for a second,
yeah.
that was actually a question that came in, is sort of what's the basic difference between the cards that we're using here and panel cards?
They're very similar, but the panel card navigator concept adds things like the flip behavior and other things like that. And it's meant more for form layout, whereas panel cards and navigators are like content control, like where you're going to position overall content. So they're a little bit overlapping each other. That's a really good question. But this opens up a lot of neat, newer sort of user interface tricks to mimic. And where this came from is that if you look at like Google and stuff like that, when you do logins stuff, they have a card in the middle of the screen, and then it slides over after you put in your username to put in your password. So we're mimicking some of the best practices for user interfaces out there. And Scott might be able to comment in terms of kind of where the industry is going as far as user interface design, but more and more this kind of everything happens in a fluid on the screen at the moment versus like page moves, etc. It's just a natural evolution, more of like what you have on a mobile phone experience.
Now, can you put cards in panel cards? Would that be allowed?
Absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and put this in here. I'll go ahead and do let's first put that inside of a panel card. Then I'm going to, around the panel card, I'm going to go ahead and put a panel layout. And I'm going to go ahead and add another panel card here just to show, oops, I put it in the wrong spot, but I'll just move this down a little bit. Okay. Did I really screw this up bad? There we go. Better. Okay. So now this is a panel layout. So half the screen on the left side should be an empty card, and our stuff should be in the right-hand side. And you can see, so you can kind of mix and match. So you can kind of think of it as using a panel card at the higher level, kind of structuring your application. And then panel cards are really more, I really see them as a enhancement on form building. It gives you some new cool things you can do with form building. And again, they work the same as a panel card, so you can show and hide them and do other things like that using the same technique as containers that we've done before.
Very cool. Thank you.
So that is what I have on there. If we have questions on that, but it's really fun, easy to use, fast, and it's going to make your stuff look a lot better. So I would definitely look at the potential of using that in terms of your user interface design, because I think you're going to enjoy it and have fun with it. It's really cool. Your users are really going to dig it.
Excellent.
You can take that to the bank.
I can. Hang on. There's a question. And that, okay, so one of the questions was, how can you use like negative pixel heights and width? And with that, and does that just happen dynamically or automatically when you're working in these panel cards?
I don't know. I don't even know why you would do that.
Okay.
We could try it, but I haven't put any of that in there, so I'd have to find out.
So, okay, great. Another question for you is, are there a restriction to the number of cards you could put inside a card navigator?
Not that I'm aware of. I think you can put in as many as you can, your system can afford.
Whereas might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, before you were talking, earlier you were talking about containers, so this isn't directly related to cards, but we were talking about the absolute layout container. And a question came up is, well, if I've got like a PDF, let's say I've got a PDF form, and I want to create a form in Alpha Anywhere that looks exactly like that PDF form, how could I go about doing it? And could I use the absolute layout container to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we've demonstrated that before, and I'd like to go ahead and show you that. That's one of the coolest little features we had in there, is sometimes people really want to reuse their existing forms. So let me just show a real quick demonstration of how you would do that. So I'm going to create a new UX component, and I'm going to go in here, and I like to put a panel card in here, so we have it all in there. I like panel layouts, so I'll go ahead and put in my panel layout, panel card, or a panel header, and we'll put in a panel card. Oops. Got to do it there. And what's cool is I can put in 2 right away. Okay, cool. Move those down so it looks good. So in this one, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to add a container control. And where's my container? Oh, it's right here. Okay. And I'm going to use the absolute layout. There we go. Okay, now what I'm going to do is inside here, I'm going to go ahead and add my controls. And this is very important. When you're going to put controls, they're going to be on the absolute layout. They have to be within the container. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple boxes. So text box 1. Okay. So now they're inside the layout. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll go apps. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like right now when I do a working preview. You're going to see I'm not seeing anything. And it's actually giving me an error saying, hey, you've got controls in your container, but you haven't laid them out. So let's go back in here. So we're going to go in here and I'm going to click on the opening tag for absolute layout. And I'm going to go over here to the right till I get to the, do I just click on it? Oh yeah, here it says absolute positions for controls. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. And now I have essentially an editor within an editor. So we have our area over here. This is called our absolute. Here are our fields. And you can see I can adjust how big that is here. So let's go ahead and put that here. I'm going to take text box number 1 and I'm going to draw here. You notice I clicked it and accept it. And you notice I'm getting pixels in terms of how it's laid out. And it puts it right here. Then I'm going to take text box number 2, put that here, and I'm going to take back number 3 and put it there. And I can click OK. So let's go ahead and save that. Now let's look and see what it looks like. So you'll see in a moment now, it re-renders it, but you notice I've got my controls and they're exactly where I put them on that, down to the pixel level. So I get exactly. Now, that's kind of like, well, that looks a little strange. So what's the really powerful thing you can do is if I go back in right here, you'll see has background image. Dun, dun, dun. So go ahead and take a scan, a JPEG of your form, and I'm just going to grab an image here, and it's probably not going to make a lot of sense, but let's go ahead and do I have an image here? I don't have a form made. Let's see. Let's just grab that one, see what that looks like. Okay. Cool. So now I'm going to go back into my absolute position, and you're going to see, oh, hey, my image is there. So I can actually modify my form size, and I can say, you know what, I want this, and this doesn't make sense on this one, but I'm now lining it up with where the area is on my form. Let's say it's a JPEG form. And you'll notice it also has the little cool alignment things, so I can align it perfect. They're like the little blue lines on there. So I can say, they should all line up around where the roof line is here. So in fact, like think of this as a roof inspection. You could say, okay, I need to know what is the angle of the roof, what is the top height, and this is a little big, so I'm going to make it bigger, and I want to know that dimension right here. So now when I show the person this information, they're going to get, and I think I might have to go to live preview. We'll see if this shows up properly, but I think it will. Yep. So, I have to go back in. I think the problem here is this. How do I get that width? Oh, I'll just go ahead and do it this way. Let's say width is 800 pixels by 1000 pixels. Now it clipped it. That was the problem there.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can go ahead and say, oh, this dimension is, 5 degrees. This is a 12-degree slope, and this is 200 square feet. And you'll notice that it renders right on the form. So if you have a form, it makes sense. You have the text box entry points. But even for this, you could do it. And then you could change the styling. You could put some extra text and stuff like that. So you can go in here and you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to add 2 things in here. I'm going to add in first some static text, and I'll say roof angle. And I'm going to also add a button in here, and I'm going to go submit results. Okay. Now I'm going to go back into my absolute layout, and I'm going to go say, you know what? I'm going to take my static text and I'm going to put that here. And I can, you notice it's got precision layouts. And I'm going to take my button and I'm just going to put it right here. And I'm going to put my button there. Okay. So it's telling me my width and button height of my button need to be 100% just so it knows how to render it. It's done that for me. I don't have to worry about that. So that's truly low code. That's negative code delivered. The new term, negative coding.
Negative code.
It's done even before you want it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've got roof angle is 5 degrees. This is, 12, this is 20, and then I submit the results. Nothing happens, but you can see it's putting that nice little button there. We can change the style. We could use a image, etc. Now, the cool thing is everything else is the same. Things like validation, things about like adding events to the click button, etc. like there. So it's kind of just a really cool way to lay out your forms so they look really good. And it takes very little time to do it. And, there are certain people who say, you know what, I need it to look exactly. There's sometimes, I think, legal requirements sometimes where, you have to show the form as it's been shown, sort of almost like a DocuSign or something like that that's out there. But again, a really cool feature. We have a number of customers that are using it to help people easily fill out forms, put up a patient chart, and on the patient chart, it has a picture of a person. So instead of having to try and lay that out in a UX component and get everything aligned, this allows you to do it in a matter of a few minutes. You just scan the image, put it in here, then create an absolute layout, and off to the races. Really handy for those kind of use cases that are out there.
Oh, that's really cool. Thanks, Dan. So just
Thank
a quick
you.
follow-up question to that. If you have a PDF, you're going to want to convert that to an image file first, like a JPEG or something like that?
That is correct.
Case?
Yeah, this
Okay.
supports just images.
Okay. And then the second thing is, well, let's say I've got a form and it's like, let's say I'm doing this for 10 pages. Is that going to be a huge performance hit to have 10 images in there? My guess is it probably wouldn't be, because JPEGs I know can shrink down pretty small, especially with
Yeah, and you can
themselves.
pre-process them to make them look good, kind of that balance between choppiness. And yeah, so what I would do is definitely look at, there's many solutions that, like I use Snagit, and in Snagit, I can take that and it will reduce the resolution, but it still looks good. It just gets rid of the bulk out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. JPEGs are very efficient, and most forms are mostly white space anyway, so that actually crunches down quite a lot.
Very true. Yeah, it kind of lends itself to this methodology very, very nicely.
Now, well, we're stuck on the PDF subject, it seems. So the next question
Let
is,
it go. By the way, that's the next demo. We're going to talk about the new PDF rendering stuff. Is coming out.
oh, all right.
Yeah, it's really
So
cool. We got
all right.
rid of Amunioi, whatever it is.
A Muni.
We kicked them to the curb. They're gone. Hit the bricks, pal.
They had a good run.
Although
They were part of our
we will
software
be
for
supporting it for some time to come, so don't worry about
Yeah.
us breaking anything. So just, don't get
Right.
all
It'll still be
panicky.
there. Right. So anyway, would it be possible then to output that as a PDF?
Why,
And
yes.
and also, does Alpha have tools for handling fillable PDFs? So many
I don't
PDF
know about
questions.
fillable. I mean,
Fillable.
you can just render a PDF on,
Yeah.
I think, as in an iframe, and whatever that PDF does will do. I think that's doable. You can actually, within a panel card, you can do that. Let's see, export. Let me see. I'm not sure. I haven't played with this, but I do know there is a absolute layer container create PDF. Well, I'll be, Well, thank you, Mr. Selwyn, for being on the call today and asking that question.
And inserting that feature ahead of time.
That
So
Mr.
that's how you
Selwyn,
do
we
it.
have no idea who that is. Yeah. So, okay, we'll call it cool feature download. Okay, let's see if that works. There's a bunch of other stuff you can do there, but let's go ahead and just have fun. And I think I might need to run this in live preview sometimes. Let me do that. I got to start my server. Dun, 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 dun. You can see it's a newer cleaner install because it asks like 12 things before you do anything. Do you really want to do this? I'm going to do this. Do you really want me to do it? I've done it.
You don't not want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. That would be our legal team that puts that in there just to confuse you.
Well, you will have been doing it.
Yeah. In order to understand this, you're going to have to hire a lawyer to be able to understand the language. Okay, so we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and put it in there. Dun, dun, dun. Render time. I'll go ahead and say, let's see, 5, 5, 5. Okay, submit the results. Let's do an export and see if that works. Not sure. I'd have to play with more. Bottom line is yes, that has the ability to export this as a PDF using that built-in function there. Not sure why it didn't work there. I'd have to play with a little bit more. It's been a while there. But again, the item you want to look for is called absolute layout container create. And it was that idea. I fill out this PDF, I want to render it, or I fill out this form, I want to render it as a PDF and save it. So you can do things. Now, one thing that's kind of cool is the action is download, but I can also call Xbasic function. So if I don't actually want them to download it, but I just want to save that file to a disk directory or on Amazon S3 and record it into a database, you can do that. So you have this really flexible way to handle those pieces from there. I wonder, I think it may be, I don't know if I've enabled Phantom.js too. It requires that library. Maybe I have to have that operating. It's been a while we did there. But as you can see there, you can do that. And that's really flexible there. Just to let you know also, there is a PDF from HTML. And this is really cool too, is that you can pick a container that you have on your screen. And inside that container, it will take that and convert it to a PDF. So you can essentially take your HTML form and save it as a PDF with the data that's in it, which is really slick and pretty handy from there. So there are two different kind of ways you can take data and turn it into PDFs. One is using an absolute layout container. The other is using a container ID there. Same kind of concept. I can either download it or send it to an Xbasic function. So maybe if someone filled out a form, you save the data in the database, you take a snapshot PDF, you save it, and then send it to an email so they have a record of what they recorded or something along those lines. A lot of fun things you can do from there.
Oh, very cool. All right, so one last PDF thing, and then we'll do an install question. I think we're out of time. But someone pointed out to us, we do have some cool Xbasic functions like PDF fill-in fields _merge. And maybe we can take a look at that.
Let's go ahead and do that. We'll go on to here. Our phenomenal documentation system. Exactly. There every day, many times a day. So we have print and PDF functions. So you can have really cool, actually I've used this before. One of the cool ones I've used before is these are like built in. These are displaying a dialog.
Those are for working with multiple PDFs, but
Right, but we have like here, you can PDF export to JPEG. Here's fill in fields merge. The
so
one
that
I
one
use
is
a
cool
lot.
because it'll take JSON data and
Exactly,
and merge it with your template basically.
And the cool thing about that is then you don't have to lay out a whole bunch of reports and stuff. You can just tell people fill in PDF forms with third-party software, and I'll do it. Similarly, too, now we have that new capability where we can take Word templates and merge the data also. So it creates that output. But one I use a lot is this PDF merge. It basically allows me to basically I can like save 3 reports as PDFs and then squish them together so I have one big PDF. So if I want to have a single PDF,
so there's a single attachment or something.
Exactly. So I'll spit out the PDFs or the reports, then I'll say, okay, I want to merge all these together, and then I want to give the person that final merge content. And you can also split it, so there's tons of capabilities built into this. And it's under here. Let me go ahead and go back up. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and put that into the chat window in case. There you go.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Here's a great question. Are all these features available in the community edition?
And the answer is absolutely.
They are. They are there. Go ahead and use them.
Yes.
Okay. So
knock yourself out.
Could we, because a couple of people had asked, okay, this universal installer seems cool. Where do I get it? Could you show folks how in Alpha Anywhere, we're going to presume that you have Alpha Anywhere installed, how you would find that installer?
Okay, so
where else you might go?
If this was my nightly story with my girl, I'd say cliffhanger, have to come back next week. But I'm not going to do that, although I'm super duper tempted. Okay, where's my project? So if you go to the Alpha Anywhere software release notes, so that is the release notes, and you can actually find those by going in here. And let me go here, go to help, view release notes. It'll open up the web page with that information on it. And it will, I swear it will. So it's opening it up there. Okay, now on there, if you just scroll down a little bit here. Oh, it's trying to load it up. All right, sorry, loaded. Come on.
While you're doing that, do you want to? Okay, yeah.
Took a second. My GoToWebinar thing is in the way. There we go. Okay, there we are. You'll see here, right here, to learn more, click on here, and it takes you to the download from there. So, and then.
Do you want to paste in that link into the chat window?
So you
can just go ahead and snag that.
Glad to.
And there was a follow-up question.
Yes, fake Dave.
Saying,
I will do that for you, even though you're fake.
You're the fake Dave.
You're the fake Dave.
This could the webinar do that? So someone had asked about ZebraHost, one of our preferred hosting partners.
Absolutely, great company.
How do I get the installer on that? So presuming you have remote desktop access, what you want to do is grab this link that Dion is going to be pasting into the chat window. You're going to open up a browser in your remote desktop session to your server at ZebraHost or your other hosting provider. You're going to paste that into a browser, and you should be able to get the installer from there. My experience with the ZebraHost sites is that they are, when you get them, they are very much locked down, which is a terrific thing, but you may need to give yourself permission to download an exe file, because I don't think you can do that right off the bat without telling the browser otherwise. All right, what else have we got? Well, I think we just about did it here. This is amazing. We have 30 seconds to spare. So
well, thank you very much, everybody.
Terrific. Yeah. So I want to, hey, thank you. Thanks everyone for showing up. Dion, thank you very much for presenting.
My pleasure.
For those of you who have questions that maybe I did miss or something else comes up, please send your email to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. Also, a quick thank you to Scott Allen, who's been there in the background helping us out. Hope to see you at our next Wednesday webinar. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.